Hello there! Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Your attention means a lot to us, so I hope you enjoy. Here's a fun fact that you might not know, because apparently this show is now Did You Know Gaming. A relatively young Arcane Studios actually helped to create Bioshock 2. That's pretty cool, right? I mean, it is for me, because Bioshock and Dishonored are two of my favourite gaming franchises of all time. But another reason this is really cool is because you can see how Arcane really learned from this experience when creating their follow-up project, Dishonored. Some of you might have seen my video on the design of Bioshock, and if not, you should give it a look after you've watched this one. I've talked at length before about how Bioshock has some of the best game design of all time, but today I want to look at another game that's design never really gets the credit it deserves. There are many different genres of video games, and subsequently an even greater number of ways to design them. For me, Bioshock is a golden example of how to design a linear, on-rails, single-route experience for a player. But if this is true, then there has to be a non-linear counterpart, an equal and an opposite, a god to Bioshock's Satan, a Mr. Smith to Bioshock's Neo, a Jon Snow to Bioshock's Daenerys, a Bowser to... No, I'm gonna stop. Enter Dishonored. Dishonored is a game by Arcane Studios which came out in 2012. It's a first-person action-adventure game that takes inspiration from other immersive sim games like Deus Ex, Bioshock, and Thief. I'd say Dishonored is a stealth game, but to be honest, this video is going to prove to you why that isn't always the case. You know that phrase that so many developers use nowadays to sell their games? No, not the world as a character, I mean play your way. Well, from some pretty basic research, Arcane Studios were the first major studio to actually coin this term in the modern era, and to be honest, they're still kind of the only studio that actually backs it up.
I back it up! I back it up!
The amazing thing about the Dishonored games is that you can really tackle them in whatever way you'd like. If you want to go in like Bioshock and kill everything in your path with magical powers, go ahead. If you want to sneak around and treat it like the first-person Assassin's Creed game that never was, go ahead. You want to go through the entire game without killing or without being seen by anyone? You can do that too. But for this to work, each level in Dishonored has to be designed with so much attention to detail and so much meticulous coordination and planning. The what-ifs and the varying conditions that go into each level are frankly absurd. And what's even more absurd is how the developers managed to cover them all. To explain how Bioshock was designed well, I took you through an entire level and showed you how the developers almost trick the player into doing exactly what they want. Well, in this one, I'm going to do the same, but I'm going to have to adapt to show you how Dishonored is designed for the player to play however the hell they want. So without further ado, here's one Dishonored level, 5 ways. It's like an egg. You know, because you got boiled and fried, scrambled, poached, and sunny side up.
Keep on smiling! Oh, shit! I said over easy!
So for this first run through the level, I'm going to give you a feel for it by playing with no special powers except Blink, a short-range teleport, and Dark Vision, which lets you see enemies through walls. So the objective of this mission is to dispose of the Lord Regent, who betrayed you at the start of the game. Let's assume that I want to be sneaky, and that I want to kill my main target. We start the mission by using Blink to get up the multiple platforms in the waterlock. This level is pretty far into the game, so by this point, a player who's mainly relying on the blink mechanic is fairly used to having to look for sneaky routes through the verticality of each level. So by doing this, we're brought to this platform. But before we go through the door, we hear these two guards talking. With Dark Vision, the game allows us to see where these enemies are and where they're looking. A player who's been relying on Dark Vision the entire game has now been trained to use enemies' vision cones to their advantage. So chances are, they're more inclined to pick the right moment here and follow this one out onto the balcony. After we've taken him out, the player naturally looks towards their objective, and they see a platform within blinking distance away. Out with the water tower, the right-hand side seems far less populated in terms of guards, so for a sneaky player, this seems much more appealing, so they carry on that way. The player's then led up the back of a structure that guards use to patrol, and with a little exploration, the player finds some information about the Royal Interrogator, maybe something to watch out for. When the player reaches the top of the structure, another blinkable distance away is a ledge leading around the side of Dunwall Tower. Walking around, the tower leads to a small vent entrance into the building. When the player gets inside, they're met with some characters having a conversation with the Lord Regent. After listening in, the player now knows that the target will be going to his room shortly, so the new objective is obviously to find where his room is, but before that, the player has to give the target time to get there. So with that time to kill, the player has the option to visit the interrogator that they read about. Whoa, hold on a sec. Have you noticed that since the start of the level, we've only been on one side of the level just because of that initial choice we made at the start that was only really made because of our playstyle? And now this objective is also on the right hand side of the level.
Coincidence? I think not!
If we follow the right hand side onwards some more, we discover a maid who's now headed straight for the interrogator. So follow her, she leads you to the basement where you can kill the interrogator and visit the outsider shrine for an extra rune. Now the player has to find the Lord Regent's chambers, which we know is upstairs from the arrow on screen. Once again, the use of verticality for blink users takes the player right to the target's room so we can take the target out. See how the level is designed to allow for the player who relies just on these two mechanics? But what about the other powers in the game? For these next two playthroughs, let's take a look at how some of the game's other special abilities can change the level entirely. This next one's called Possession. It allows the player to take control of rats, fish, and at the highest level, other humans. So you basically become Bran Stark.
And the three-eyed raven.
Alright, so with Possession, the player will climb up the usual starting route, but if they see a single rat, the game has taught them in previous levels that this usually means that a special possession route through the level, like a vent, is in their vicinity. So the player follows the rat to a pack of rats, and although there's nothing there, a Possession player will still be looking for something. And what do they find right above the pack of rats? A new route through the level. The player follows the left-hand side of the level this time, and they're taken to a worker at the tower who tells the player to swim up to the main doors through the room that they're in.
You can get access to the tower's main doors from there. Oh, watch out for the hagfish.
Wait, did you hear that? Hagfish. Perfect, that means we have something to possess. So the player possesses a fish and swims through the vent and into the tower. Genius. The small promise of a possession route at the beginning of the level ushered them to a place where they could use their playstyle to their advantage. Once in the tower, chaining possession between guards will get the player to a vantage point right next to the Lord Regent's chambers. But because they didn't take the time to visit the basement this time, they meet the target going into the room. Possession. Stab, get out, done. Alright, what about another power? Fully upgraded Bend Time allows the player to stop time for a short period. It kind of makes the game breathtakingly easy, but it's a great way to show off more of this game's versatility. This time, if the player checks out this door, they see an arc pylon, and they know that the use of Bend Time will allow them to enter the room, disable it, and get through. Let's assume that they want to do things non-lethally this time. At the start of the level, Samuel told us about a broadcast station that we might want to take a look at. Once again, the player sees an arc pylon, but because the game has taught them how to deal with this test successfully nearer the start of the level, the player gets through it with no problems. Once the player learns how to deal with the target non-lethally, it's a simple safe crack to get an audio file that neutralizes the target. Okay, fine, but what about a player who doesn't care about stealth at all? Did someone order an all guns blazing run? Okay, so it kind of goes without saying, but going straight through the middle of the level stealthily is nigh on impossible. So this route really lends itself to a more aggressive approach. Using all of the tools in their inventory, the player has to do a bit more legwork to catch the target, who, due to the player triggering the alarm on the way in, has fled to the roof. Look at that, a whole new area of the level just for this playstyle. Dishonored might punish non-stealthy players, but at least they design the game allowing for that playstyle. Once you find your way through, it's a fairly simple fight. But Duncan, you said you could get through the game without being seen and without killing anyone. Well, you're right. For all the amazing detail Arcane put into their level design, they also thought of the people who wanted to not be seen. And this route is actually really clever too, because it's designed for the player that's probably used all of the other routes so far. First off, don't even go into the water tower. Use Blink to go up the outside. It's a really sneaky placement to start this route, but it's one that's easy enough to find if the player really wants to find an alternative way through the level. Next, make it easy for yourself and just run along rooftops. Don't even bother touching the ground where all the enemies are. Next, shut off the watchtower, head into the vent, get to the safe. From playing the level before, the player probably knows the safe code, or they can just Google it. So grab the broadcast thing, get up to the broadcast tower, put it in, and that's it. Hopefully all of this lets you see how some games really do let you play your way. Thank you so much for watching. Want to watch more content like this? Check out my video on the design of Bioshock. If you want to check out our monthly podcast, head to the description and have a look. If you want to read our written articles that we publish as much as we can, please do, it's over on Medium. But most importantly, make sure you subscribe, hit that bell icon so you don't miss more videos coming soon, and thank you very much for watching again. Tune in next time.